My name is Brian Ruiz, and I am the city's interim director of community and economic development. That department includes our building inspection division, which is the bulk of the topics that we expect to explore and hear from you about tonight, but not exclusively building inspection. We have a number of other staff in attendance in case topics are raised that venture beyond strict building permitting and inspection. We wanted to make sure that we had a really good turnout from the staff side tonight to hear all that you have to say to us. So I've introduced us. We really want to hear who you are. So why are we here? Aside from misspelling the word here, we are here to hear from you. And you'll see that very shortly. You're not going to hear much from me in the form of a presentation, because very soon we're going to turn it over to all of you. But as I said, there you go. We're not going to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. We would be here far too long, and your time is far too valuable. I've got about 3 slides to show you. And this one I was talking to several of you, before we got started. And this one really speaks to something most all of us can relate to, and that is we've been busy. Y'all been busy. You can't get workers, you can't get materials, and all of that is mirrored in the volume that we in the Community and Economic Development Department are processing. This is a screenshot of a service that's on our website that's GIS based, and you can narrow and zoom in on all the way down to a single permit, but really, because I have it zoomed out to the entire city, shows you for the period. This one I believe is fiscal year 21. So from October of 20 to September of 21, the most recent full fiscal year, our building inspection division issued 9,249 permits for job value totaling just over $492 million. That's investment in our city. And a lot of you had a lot to do with that investment. We take that very, very seriously, and that's why we're here tonight. It's why we have a customer satisfaction survey that goes out after permits are issued, and again when they are finalized or CO'd. A little bit about plan review experience. Those of you that submit plans for various construction projects and permits, this going all the way back to October of 2017, but shows the average number of days by month, the average calendar days that our plan reviewers took to review plans for building, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. And that big red line is the 7-day mark. So on average, and that doesn't mean that we hit it on every single permit, but on average, they are below that 7-day commitment that we have now for about 2.5 years made to our customers to process these reviews, to complete these reviews in a timely manner. Approval, that's what we really care about, right? Is getting from application to approval. And so here, definitely got some work to do. The blue line is commercial. The orange line, no coincidence there, is residential. And you can see by year the calendar days from application to permit approval. And I've only broken it down by commercial and residential. We had a little bit of a blip there in 2020 for commercial, but got it back down to the 25 calendar day mark for commercial projects on average. There are some that take longer and some that go much more quickly. The big takeaway from this, I hope, is that you know that we're watching this stuff. We watch all of it. Inspection experience, plan review experience, permit approval experience. One last quick plug before we really get into the listening is about our express permitting, which a lot of customers don't know about. It isn't a choice that someone makes to say, I want this expressly. It's based on the type of permit that someone applies for. So generally speaking, simpler, single trade residential permits, jobs, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, new roof, windows and doors. I should have said non-metal roof, they'll correct me later, is what we consider a type of permit that, going back to late 2018, we determined with a lot of collaboration internally and with some heavy customers. One of our big window customers we engaged and talked to about window and door replacement permits, and how would this be received? How would they handle only providing us with product approval numbers as opposed to actual installation specifications for us to be able to permit that, limiting the number of eyes that have to get put on that permit application or those plans. Since then, super well received. When someone applies for a permit that is express permit eligible, that permit, our commitment is to process it in 30 minutes or less. And we have done that for that entire time period now about 8 out of 10 times. The average is very close to 30 minutes because, as I said, the same sort of workforce challenges that some of you have experienced now for a year or two, we've experienced them too. Having new people come in, keeping up with express permitting is a challenge when factored in amongst phone calls and in-person visits and plan review and assignment and back and forth with those customers. But we're very proud of the express permitting service. Those contractors that apply online and get that approval literally in 30 minutes or less are at work. We don't hold them up at all. Okay, so I messed up again. Last one, I mentioned a survey that we send out. It goes out via SurveyMonkey. It's automated. It comes out after permits are issued, goes to the email address of the applicant for that permit. And if that permit is finalized more than 30 days after it's issued, then another survey invitation is sent out. And the reason we chose that is so that for simple jobs, those sort of single trade residential permits, we don't bombard you with survey invitations for something you permitted on Friday, did over the weekend, and got finalized on Monday. But if it's a bigger job, took more than 30 days to get from approval to final, then you get 2 invitations, because we want to hear about really your plan review and approval experience, and then your inspection experience getting to that final or CO. So of survey respondents, I will qualify that to say this is only those who clicked on the link and took the survey going back to the first quarter of fiscal year 2016, so late 2015 when the survey was first launched. This is our experience on a single question. There are multiple questions, but this is our experience in one of them, and that is their overall experience with our building inspection team. Those that chose satisfied or very satisfied, and you can see it runs in the 80 to 90% range most of the time. Again, not scientifically valid because the respondents self-select into it, but another way of us gathering feedback from our customers to act on, which now finally takes me to the moment you've all been waiting for, and that is we want to hear from you. And we have structured this evening to give you multiple choices. They're not exclusive. You can do all 4 of them if you want, but I'll run through them real quick. For those of you in attendance tonight who would like to step to that microphone on that stand right there and ask your question or make your comment, that's why we're here. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you will notice there are comment cards on the center of all your tables and multi-tool pens that we would like for you to take with you when you leave tonight. Those pens are our gift to you. But if you prefer to write your comment or question on that card, you can hand it to a staff member to bring up here for Dale or myself to read aloud and respond to, perhaps. Or you can fill out that same comment card with your question or comment, and you can leave it behind, and we will take it with us when the evening is over. We're going to be capturing all of this. You've seen the cameras and the communication staff. Thank you to Nate and Andrew, by the way, for being here tonight to record this session. Those that could not attend will be able to watch this in a replay scenario You can leave your written questions, and if you don't prefer any of the top three, or you have another idea or comment or question after tonight, you're free to email lced@lakelandgov.net. That is a mailbox that goes right to Lakeland Community and Economic Development, lced@lakelandgov.net. You send it there, I will see it. So, you've heard enough from me. It's time we hear from you. So what brave soul is going to get up first? I didn't bring my Captain America shield or anything, so please be kind, but we do want to hear your thank you, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity we got tonight to come and have this discussion. I would like to say that including tonight, I have 20 more minutes of direct instruction on how to use Cahoots more than I have on eTrackIt. Is there a time or a place where you offer training, because there's no ability for us to communicate person to person with the building department, as a general statement? I did a permitted project this past year, simple residential remodel. It was an extensive remodel, but didn't change the footprint of the building. 4 months from the time I started the process till I had my permit. Part of that was that there's no response back from your system that you've received a submission. The only way we know is that we wait 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days, and keep checking our email every day and telling our customer, just haven't heard back from the city yet, of course, which they don't believe. So there's no direct, we've got it, we'll respond in a few days or whatever. And then the bulk of that 4 months was ignorance on my part of not having it properly filled out, because I don't do a lot of permitting. I'm a very small contractor. I do very custom jobs, and a lot of them are not in the city limits of Lakeland. So I accept the responsibility of ignorance. But do you offer any educational process on this system you guys have adopted that is different from the old days of a napkin and I walk in and I walk out with a permit, which I could go back to if there's a discussion we could have for that?
Thank you so much. If you're willing, would you tell us your name?
Sure. My name's John Watkins. I had Watkins Electrical Contractors for about 30 years as an industrial electrical contractor, and 4 years ago, I got my general contractor's license, and I've pretty much retired from the industrial electrical, but now I do residential construction.
Thank you so much. Sounds like you know what you're doing.
Done it a little while.
The short answer to your question is there's not, but we're going to get to a slide, and there's only about 3 more in the whole presentation, but one of them after this is actually another Kahoot asking about topics that our attendees would like to know more about. So I'm going to guess, based on the nature of your question and the content and the fact that you got applause, is that we need to do a better job.
Well, the applause was for the napkin permit, if you noticed that.
We're probably not going to go quite that far back, but we are absolutely committed to providing as much training and resource as is needed to get through that. And I'll say this, you don't know it, and that's the problem a lot of times is that we don't do a good job letting people know what's available. We have our computer application specialist, Sarah, there she is in the back. Sarah Follett is our department's guru, all things TrackIt, eTrackIt, and ePlan. And our plans review software works with TrackIt, but they are separate systems. But she's, for as long as we've had them launched now, actually either launched go-to meetings to share a screen with a customer to show them step by step what they need to do to get where they're trying to go, or more recently, just from memory, can explain to them based on the screens and the fields that they are seeing what they need to do step by step. But we can take that even a step further and have more sessions like this in a smaller, I assume a smaller setting, where we answer questions, we demo, we walk through, we talk about perhaps why some of the things are the way they are. With ePlan in particular, file naming is always an issue because of the versioning that the software does for us. So really getting into some of those finer details. But you either have my number and Dale's number, or we will get yours before the evening is over and make
really,
sure that we get in touch with you to do that.
It really has shifted a large burden of expense back onto the contractor to do a system that we didn't want, we didn't ask for. Being able to walk in, sit down with a permit tech who was knowledgeable about the process, who may help us be able to fill in blanks that we otherwise didn't fill in, all that's gone now. And you've just about made it to where we want to find a third party to be a permit runner that does it on a daily basis. That's not really the direction that I would like to be able to go in. So I'll just vote right now. I don't like it at all. That's old people. We don't like change. But the ability to go in, sit down, explain, because I've never done two jobs yet that were cookie cutter enough that you could have filled out the application twice with two different jobs. And every one of them, those slight nuances would take 30 seconds for a knowledgeable person to be able to say, that should be handled this way. That's a 1 week delay with your electronic system, because there is no place for you to be able to non-cookie cutter a job. If you're doing brand new construction, which I don't do, maybe it's easier. But in a lot of design work back when I was doing my electrical business, design build doesn't fit the categories of your electronic system. I would be a proponent for funding a liaison. So you have your e-track system over here, or you can go over to this office to our liaison, get in line. I'd sit in line and just say, help me get this thing done. I would do that. I mean, that's how much I despise the system that I've gone through a couple of times with the permitting. So I don't know if anybody else has the same feelings, but at least a few. So I'm not the only ignorant. You know, I don't like electronics. I have a computer, I have a cell phone, and I have a smartphone and all that kind of stuff. But I like to be able to spread my stuff out and see it, and we've lost that. And with your system, there's another thing about it that I can probably talk to your software person about, but you can get to the same screen from two different ways, and if you got there from this way, it doesn't accept the information that you thought you put in there. If you come in from this way, it does. So you sit there and you wait a week and thinking that you've inputted it and you haven't.
Okay.
I mean, these are some of the things, and like I say, there's been zero education. You gave us more time on that Cahoots explanation than what we've had on a far more complex system that affects our income. So I'll sit down and be quiet and waiting for the future slides.
You know, certainly we hear you. Among the other things you will see in a later slide is a plan to replace Trackit in the current fiscal year or next fiscal year. We've got the funding budgeted to replace Trackit, or to find the successor to Trackit. In the interim, we will make ourselves more available for sessions to help customers navigate that. Particularly contractor applicants. Our homeowner applicants actually cannot apply online because of our experience after Hurricane Irma when we opened the system up. The challenges with selecting the correct permit type led to infinitely more work for our staff. But for our contractors and our architects and our engineers who are applicants, we will create sessions. We'll probably do some of them remotely. We'll offer some others in person. We got all new chairs in the Building Inspection Division conference room last week, by the way, where we could hold such a session or multiple sessions to try to address your concern in the short term and that of others. But then also, like I say, the plan to replace Trackit is really for two reasons. One is absolute user friendliness. Is to get to a place where somebody who's comfortable using Facebook or just a simple web browser can go in and follow easily defined steps to get from application, beginning their application to submitting their application. We've invested a lot of money in ePlan or Project Docs, our electronic plans review software. There is an update coming for that as well, just after the first of the year, that's going to make a few changes that we hope are easier for customers. Yeah. Project Docs. Noted. I appreciate your feedback, and I promise you we will schedule some opportunities to do a better job walking our customers through that stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm David Pendry. I'm a homeowner. We received a permit to put in solar with battery backup back in May. It took 5 months to get it completed. And I've talked to Dale. I appreciate Dale's help, as well as there were a few more people that had to get involved. We went through 8 inspections. 7 of them turned down, some of them for as little as the engineering plans had to have the engineer seal on it, and anytime there was a problem with one of the plans and one page was changed out of all those plans, it was turned down because of, or shall I say it wasn't turned down, it was held up because all of the plans had to have the same date, the engineering stamp. So it kept getting bounced back and forth between Lakeland and the engineering firm in Tampa. You just cannot believe the nightmare with doing this. Dale has talked to me numerous times, and it needs to be, if we're going to be a solar-friendly utility and area. I had solar in Apollo Beach before we moved back to Lakeland, and it was not near the nightmare that this one has been. One of them was the picture here. This disconnect right here was the same. Both of these were identical. And the engineer came out and he says, because this label, if you turn your head and look up on the label and it doesn't say that it's a disconnect, even though this one passed, this one was just like this, had to be replaced with this one. I mean, it's asinine what went on. You just cannot believe. They had to drill in the side of the meter can, which is crazy because the inspector, and we got 2 different inspectors that came out. Each one, if we failed in one area and got that corrected, they failed us on something else. I mean, it just was crazy that it takes 5 months to put from the time you get the permit till the time you can get the final okay. And then after you get your final inspection, then the permit sits over across the street and nobody notifies Lakeland Electric that they can now come out and change out the meter. You've got 2 different departments within the city of Lakeland, and neither one of them are communicating with each other. That shouldn't happen. When the permit is finished and signed off over in the building division, it should immediately go across the street. It shouldn't take me coming back into town a week later and go over to Lakeland Electric and they say, we didn't know that you passed inspection. And so then they get into their computer and say, oh, you passed your inspection. And then on top of that, you have to have a bi-directional meter, have a new meter put in, and it has to start on your meter, start on your billing period. So luckily, they jumped through hoops and did it in one day, because they have to send somebody out to re-inspect from Lakeland Electric, and then the next day, a meter guy comes out and changes out the meter. But you just cannot believe the stuff. My intention is to affect change so that nobody else has to go through this. I worked for the City of Lakeland for almost 28 years at the power plant, and I've never seen such a nightmare as dealing with the electrical division and the inspections department. I mean, it's like the guys come out there and say, well, I don't like this, rip it out. Well, if it's a permit and it's been approved by your plans people and it's been approved by engineers, then why in the world does a inspector that comes out say, rip it out? I'm not going to pass it.
You actually spoke to me too, Mr. Pendry, and I hopefully helped to get that, at least the reviews approved and get your permit issued. First, I'm sorry to hear of your experience, or even your continued experience after we got the permit issued. We do have a fair amount of integration with Lakeland Electric, not on the solar side. I'm going to have to look into that, really on the new service side, where we do power releases for Lakeland Electric on like new houses and things of the like. So I know it can be done, that we can create sort of that communication with them so that they know when a solar or photovoltaic permit has been finalized, then they know as quickly as we know that it's released for them to make that meter change out that you described. Where your disconnects are concerned, I'm not qualified to talk about those disconnects.
Well, I'm not impressed the looks of it, because they both were identical. Oh, some of the turn downs were the fact of they didn't like, this is a company that does work for Florida Power Corp, Florida Power Light, Orlando Utilities. It's not a small solar outfit. Some of the issues were with, you see all the labeling on everything? Some of it was the inspector didn't like the wording that was put about backfeed or whatever. I mean, these labels, a lot of them, when the house gets painted, the labels will be painted over. So, I mean, it's really crazy that we're checking to make sure that the I is dotted, but in the scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. Yet, on the inspection day, it matters. But beyond that, as far as the operation of the system, it doesn't matter, because nobody's going to be messing with my solar system unless I alert them.
And so I'll speak to the comment you made about inspections versus approved plans. Unless what is being inspected deviates from those approved plans, our inspectors should not be heaping on additional requirements or changing the requirements that were outlined in the plans. Where the labeling on those disconnects are concerned, it really is for the fire department or for first responder safety, so that the fire department knows, should they have to respond to your home, God forbid, that they know that they need to trip those disconnects so that there's not power where they think there is not power. I mean, that's the intent behind it. I'm not saying that what you're saying about painting over it isn't true.
Right. Well, I have a warning sign on the side of the house that's screwed onto bigger than this piece of paper, about possible backfeed and all this stuff. And it is a solid plastic piece bigger than this piece of paper that's on the wall. So, I mean, all these other labels are like stick-on labels. So, I mean, and when we got different inspectors out there, one guy went out and sat in his car looking for ways he was going to turn it down. I mean, you just cannot believe, and like I say, we have several city commissioners here. if you want Lakeland to be a solar-friendly community, this is ludicrous, taking 5 months. And one guy that I asked to give me a bid, because of course with me retiring from the City of Lakeland, I was used to the bidding process, so I always got more than one bid. I had one company tell me that they would not put solar in the City of Lakeland because of the issues dealing with the building department. Now, if the residents of the City of Lakeland know that, and the reason being, simple solar is simple. But when you start talking battery backup, that's where the can of worms are open.
It is a much more complex system. I have made note of your experience or your contractor's experience, much like the first gentleman that spoke, in having plans that were submitted kicked back without even being reviewed because of the orientation of the pages or the sealing of them, naming convention, those kinds of things. We're going to continue to work on that. A newer version is going to solve our naming problem so that files don't have to be named the same to version, but we're going to continue to work possibly with some of those same types of sessions where we work with applicant contractors so that they become much more comfortable at submitting plans for permit approval. That won't necessarily lead to or solve all of the issues that you've described, but it will help at least some of those review cycles that never even got to a reviewer. Because that held up the project. I'll concede that, and again, I'm terribly sorry for your experience through that.
Sometimes it really helped to get Mr. Bush and the engineers at Sim Power in Tampa to communicate directly with each other, because doing it through the computer system just doesn't get it.
Noted.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pendry. Okay.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Russell Cassidy, Brandon Electric. I'm a licensed DC, over 35 years experience in the electrical trade. I do want to say that your express permits, it's not express for me. I pull permits in Hillsborough, City of Tampa, Pasco, Manatee, Orange County. The most difficult permits I pull are City of Lakeland. Very difficult getting an electrical permit here. Simple jobs like a like-for-like type of situation where I'm simply changing out a panel in one of your residents' homes here. I've been asked to do arc flash study, for it. I have been asked for plot plans. I've been asked what type of material I'm using. The questions never end. The permit is prolonged. I submit what I'm being asked, something else comes at me. It's gotten so bad that I've hired a electrical engineer to do some of our plans for us, draw up plans. So, for instance, the other day I had some stuff in Georgetown, which is a mobile home community here. We have a contract with that management company and do a lot of work for them. So those were kicked back to me because the arc flash study was not utilizing Lakeland Electric. So then I had to request from Lakeland Electric, get the KVA that was there, submit that to my engineer to get him to redo those plans. So this is engineered by a licensed engineer, electrical engineer, that's being turned down by Lakeland to get a permit. So there's constantly this back and forth. I'm doing so much work just to try to get the permit, and most of these projects are simply trying to keep people safe, keep the customer safe, take care of, not to create fires. It's just, it's kind of out of control for us. So.
I appreciate the perspective, and we really do want the same thing. We want to keep everyone safe as well. That's the whole purpose behind Florida Building Code and all of the related codes. What I will commit to you, and I talked to a couple of others before the event started this evening, is to continue to look at holding engineers, the designers, really, and I'll say hold them accountable, but really to rely on their expertise. And that is, unless there is a code failure that is so egregious that it cannot be approved, that we're going to let the liability perhaps lie with the engineer that designed it. Now that's removing a level of consumer protection, mind you, that holds projects up, but also ensures that that project meets the strict letter of the code. But if that is a licensed engineer who's signing off on it, even though it may not comply to the strict letter of the code, we're going to explore and evaluate not disapproving for those kinds of things. Okay. And let them, and that's a meeting we had with a smaller group of contractors a few months ago and talked about sort of this same issue. The problem is, and Mr. Pendry brought up Gary Bush's name, and I know Gary is not well loved in the electrical community, but when I sit down with Gary, and I can be pretty heated at times, and sit down with Gary because we've got an unhappy customer, and what they've described to me makes no sense, and Gary sits down and shows me point by point by point with code reference everything that he has required, which is what the statute now requires that our plans reviewers provide, and our inspectors. When they disapprove or fail an inspection or a plan review, they are required to provide the section of the Florida Building Code that led to that disapproval.
And that's fine, sir, but when they do that, I'd like to have all of it at once. I don't want to do it again, submit it, and then be told I need a plot plan.
I agree, and so, but
you know,
my point in saying all of that, and I apologize for, I'll sum it up quickly, is rather than me continue to beat on Gary Bush, I'm trying to relieve some of his burden to say,
sir.
That engineer signed and sealed that. Unless you see something that is red alert, black letter, public safety, we're not going to nitpick that engineer's plans. Now, I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm saying we're going to evaluate doing that, because what we're hearing from you, what we heard from Mr. Pendry, is what we're hearing time and again for years now. And Gary's so likable. When I sit down with him, I learn so much, and he proves to be technically right. Maybe a lot of these other local governments are not doing as thorough a job, and so we end up being the ones that are tougher than others. So we got to find that balance. I mean, that's what our whole department is about, is finding that balance for our customers, for your customers as well, and for our other city departments, whether that's Lakeland Electric or the fire department or Public Works. So thank you so much for your comments. We're not giving up.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hey, so I'm Tyler Fox over at Richard Fox Plumbing.
Uh-huh.
And as far as plumbing standalone permits go, I was actually just telling my brother, those have been some of the easiest to work with in the city of Lakeland. I can't speak for electrical or these other ones, but I know with like replacing water heaters and stuff and pulling permits, it's been very smooth. The question I was gonna ask though was, since the pandemic and everything, a lot of the inspections have become virtual. And I was wondering, for any home that's occupied, we've been told that those inspections are gonna be virtual. However, we're paying the same full price that we would pay for any other permit, and we're going there to take the pictures and submitting them and everything. And so I didn't know what went into the pricing process for permitting, and if doing it virtually versus in person could, bring like a cheaper permit for if it's all being done virtually, or I guess if you could just explain what goes into the cost of that, and then I could take your answer sitting down.
And what was your name again, sir? I got the Richard Fox part.
Tyler Fox.
Tyler Fox, okay. Nice to meet you, Tyler.
Nice to meet you.
Well, it shouldn't surprise anyone that our move to virtual inspections, has been a bit by the seat of our pants. Even 2 years now, or 18, 19 months removed from the onset of the pandemic. It has, as far as I know, and Dale can correct me if I'm wrong, has not been a mandatory service. We do have inspectors, or we gave inspectors the ability to result in inspection in a scenario like you described, an occupied home. They weren't comfortable going into the interior of the home to do the inspection. They could result it in a way that rescheduled it for the next day and put it on a list for those staff members capable of doing virtual inspections to complete it virtually. And that may have come with sort of an expectation that that was a mandatory virtual inspection, and I regret that that happened, because there are other inspectors who were comfortable going in and who did not do that, and we've struggled to come up with a one-size-fits-all approach to our own organizational, our staff, and who's maybe at risk. And we're dealing with a pandemic, as you are. We have not considered lowering fees. What goes into those fees, of course, is staff time, and there is a savings with a virtual inspection versus a in-the-field inspection, although I'm not exactly sure how much, depending on the proximity. They don't generally drive, the length of the city for a single inspection. Until we get to a point, and I think we can all agree that we want the pandemic to end, so that we don't have to continue to do some of these things the way that we are, and can simply offer them as a service. That's going to be, again, on a later slide, same slide I was talking about earlier, about potential improvements on the horizon would be improved virtual inspections, but completely voluntary. If a customer, contractor, homeowner wanted to avail themselves of a virtual inspection, invest perhaps in some technology that's better for that, as opposed to FaceTime or GoToMeeting or something like that, and lessen the burden on that contractor homeowner as far as what they need to provide us. They perhaps don't have to do as much other than be on site when we need to complete the inspection or when that time is decided. And that could potentially come with a fee reduction. We would have to evaluate that, and all the fees that our building inspection division charges are set by a resolution of the city commission. So even discounts in a scenario like you described would have to be contemplated in an amended fee resolution, but it could be done. I think it has merit, certainly, to evaluate. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ed Swanson. I'm a manager at Cintas Fire Protection. And my question here tonight is, a month ago, the state of Florida changed its monitoring conversions requirements, where you no longer have to pull a permit to change monitoring. Where does the City of Lakeland, are they aware that that change happened a month ago? Are they adopting that change? Are they resistant to that change?
Fire. What's the monitoring system monitoring?
Of a fire alarm system.
Okay.
The monitoring, so if I go in and take over ABC's alarm and I switch the monitoring over to me, in the past you had to pull a permit. Now with the changes enacted and signed off by Chief Petroni a month ago, there's no permit needs to be pulled. I can give you copies of the new documents if you're not aware of them.
What you're describing, and we're not aware of it, is our fire department, our fire protection division.
Okay, it's different than this permit.
Well, they permit fire alarm systems.
Okay.
They permit sprinkler systems, and when I say they permit them, they review them, they inspect them. Our building inspection division actually processes them. They flow through our department, but only in as much as we take the application, we send the reviews to them. Once they approve, we collect the fees on their behalf and issue the permit, but we're not as up to speed as you are in the industry on the requirements for a fire alarm monitoring service, but we've made note of it, and we'll get with our fire marshal, Cheryl Edwards, and find out if, A, she's aware of it, I'm sure she is, and are there any changes we need to make on our side on the permit types. It sounds like if it's not required, then we just won't be getting any more permit applications for the type of work you've described.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I'll be quick. Brandon Clark with the Ruthvens. One comment that I've shared a couple times that just wanted to share in this forum is, from our standpoint, ground up new construction, commercial, one of our biggest pain points has been the coordination between the building department, fire, and water and wastewater. And sometimes it's during the permitting process, kind of as was just discussed in the fire piece. Sometimes it's closing out and finaling and COing the building. And our most recent example has been more on that end, where everything was buttoned up and ready to go through the building department. Everything was ready for a CO, and at the very end, there was some communication that hadn't happened with water and wastewater, and they insisted on an easement being required, which then just delayed the CO of the building by about a month. So from my standpoint, I feel like y'all probably take a lot of heat from things that are fire and water and wastewater really issues. Because it feels like one permitting or one inspection or one kind of finaling out of a permit process. But my recommendation would be that there would be some better organizational coordination and cohesiveness around those three groups, because as you think about delivering the service to our community, kind of the developer contractor community, those three pieces are very critical in their own piece of the puzzle. So, to me, that there's not, kind of one person other than Sean that all of that rises up to, makes it, cumbersome, and where if there is a pragmatic issue to be addressed, there's really no way to do it other than elevating it all the way to Sean.
Thank you, Brandon. That was an astute observation, a tough one to solve. We do see that scenario on occasion. I have, over the last few months, been working with the department heads in Public Works and Fire and the water utility to try to address some of these coordination type concerns. I don't have a silver bullet response, because every project is different. They go through site plan approval, and hopefully those various departments who are the experts at what they are evaluating, reviewing, and approving. But you were absolutely right that CED is the gatekeeper, and from the perspective of everyone in this room and outside this room, it's just the City of Lakeland. They don't draw a distinction between community and economic development, Public Works, maybe the fire department a little bit as first responders, not so much as inspectors and reviewers. And the water utility, we're all one organization, one local government, and the permitting process, like it or not, flows through our department, through building inspection, before that through the development review process for civil and horizontal construction. That involves a lot of other departments that our department has influence over, but not authority over, as Brandon described. So I can't just go to the water utility or Public Works with an iron fist and say, this is the way it is, because the requirements that they have are carry as much weight as the Florida Building Code and our Land Development Code and others, and all of them exist for a reason. Brings me to a point, and I'm so sorry you've been waiting, but I'm only going to be 30 more seconds, is it's okay for us to disagree. Where we run afoul, I feel like, and as maybe as a society, is not doing a better job explaining why that particular inspection failed or that plan review was not approved, is not just a code reference, but the ability and the willingness to take the time, and we've got plenty of experts that are capable of doing this, explaining the intent behind the regulation. Just because it's in the code is no longer enough. It's our job to explain that intent, to explain why it exists, why it's important, and in a best case scenario, convince our contractor customer that it is appropriate. That may be a tall burden, but it's what we have to do. We can't just say because I said so or because it's in the code. We've got to be able to demonstrate that intent. You've been so patient. I'm going to give you all the time you need.
I'll step up. My name is Stephanie Gavrick, and just got a quick question on plan reviews. I had heard that it was in the hopper that there may be some pre-approved, pre-ready to go single-family resident plans, kind of like in a library. So if we want to step up, the city's asking us to build affordable housing, that there are homes ready to go that we can just go in, pick up a cookie cutter plan, and start without having to go through the plan review process.
What you're describing, I'm going to look to Teresa if she's still here. And I'm going to assume, rather than the library, that they're actually in our affordable housing office, where we have paid designers to design the homes and to give us permission to build them over and over and over without the need to pay that designer to design another house.
Right.
So our affordable housing office is in the Coleman Bush building over on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, just north of Memorial. I can give you the number to them, or I can put you in touch with Teresa Mayo, is standing back there as our planning and housing manager. She can get you hooked up with Annie Gibson as our housing program supervisor. She will be able to get you those plans and build as many of them as you want.
I was going to say, then, so maybe speaking of building as many as you want, maybe we can plug with your colleagues that we should have a meeting like this on impact fees.
Noted. Something else our department is heavily involved in. Anybody else in person? Commissioner Music. I've got a number of cards to read too when Commissioner Music's done.
Thank you. So two things. One, over the last 20 years, I've been able to make a living for myself and my family, in part because of your department and the wonderful things that you've done. And this is important because this helps us find the holes that we got to fill. And I appreciate that. I want to piggyback a little bit off of the comments you said about explaining why an inspection fails. So I'm a general contractor, but all I've done for about the last decade is single trade, so I just do roofing. But I'll fail an inspection, and it'll be something like, vent not sealed properly, or bowl around perimeter, or something like that. They won't be specific, and they probably have a camera. They have something. So for me to be able to access a failed inspection and say, hey, listen, here's what I need you to fix, is just simple. Because we all have a phone, we all have a way to be able to get that. But when I look and all I see is text, right? It's just difficult. But outside of that, I'm very thankful that we were able to redo this. I walked around and I saw all the name tags of those that didn't show up. So I hope that they watch this online for sure. But to sit up here and to hear this can be difficult for sure. So I hope that we are able to not only take notes but have a follow-up as to what we're going to do with all the things that we heard. But I do want to say thank you. We pull permits in about 19 different municipalities. I don't pull the permits. I have my staff do it, fortunately, which is my mother, and I love that. She sits there and reads a book and does it. But I was texting her while we were going, and I was following up with this. And this is for single trade. I don't want to speak for any else of you, especially electricians. But this is a very, very easy municipality for me to pull a permit, get an inspection, use an affidavit if it works. But I would love to see, because we do fail inspections on occasion, I would love to see a photo of Mike, just fix this and we're golden. Because it is, it's a lot of square footage, right? There's a lot of parts on a roof. So for us to not have to call them back, and then the inspectors are all busy, right? So they can't necessarily answer the phone. So I think for us, that little tweak, and maybe even for plumbers as well, right? If they could get a picture of, man, this union here is no good, or this didn't work. So
Right. We have the functionality on the inspector's iPads to take that photograph.
Well, there
and
we go.
attach it
That's
right while they're doing it.
Yeah.
So that comment is heard loud and clear, and we will make sure that they start attaching photographs when their failure is on something they can photograph.
Well, and that's right. I mean, they're failing it because they're seeing something they don't like. So to be able to have that is awesome. So thank you
Yep.
guys very much.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to run through unless anybody else is coming to the mic. Okay. No, take your time.
Hey, good evening. I'm Barrett with MDM Services. We're an engineering, environmental, and construction firm. First thing I want to say is thank you for having the forum to do this. It takes a lot of leadership to coordinate this and be able to take the heat in the feedback, and so that's appreciated. We permit and design and build from anywhere from here to Ohio, and you don't see that. It's a rarity. So we appreciate that. It's good to see it in our own community. The first thing I'll hit on is just the individual files from the engineering perspective. Uploading plans, I know you all are aware that's quite the fiasco. So what is driving the individual file upload? Is it the software and breaking out the plans? It's a software limitation?
It is.
Okay. So that's obviously, it's creating a lot of work, extra work for you all, extra work for us, a lot of time lost there. So if you guys know about it, then that's something definitely that, from the engineering standpoint and submitting plans, we could fix and improve upon. You hit on it right on its head earlier about the comments. Somebody addressed it, and it's, if we're getting revisions back on the plans or comments back, really we would like to see, what is it that you're wanting to see? What is it that the reviewer needs for the correction? I know, we probably see about 80% of the time where it's the code is referenced as to what is the, what's missing, right? But sometimes it is just, hey, lack of X, Y, Z, and there's no background explanation right there. And I would be willing to, and I would think other design professionals too, would be willing to take more of the responsibility on the designer side and put that omen on us, holding the professional licenses. Hey, if you have it on your plans, you're signing and sealing it, then hold us accountable, right? So that's my comment on that from the engineering side. One comment on now the contractor side is for a company like us who does, engineering, environmental, and construction, so multi-part, right now on eTrack-It, you basically have to create a separate account for each of these divisions that we do, right? So we have a engineering account, we have a construction account, we have an environmental account, and this is a huge pain it's not set up for design build, which is, I'm sure we're the minority, not everybody is multi-division company, but for somebody who's trying to do design build process, it's not efficient right now. So we'd like to see that, an approval there.
I'll try to remember each of the points that you made. On the last one, it is really the way that Track-It at present is set up is by professional credential.
Okay.
So an engineer has an engineer record, an architect, a contractor.
Yep.
So you can't combine all of those. Unfortunately, it works great, like you said, for everyone else,
Right.
not so much for a firm that has experts in all of those fields. And so perhaps, I don't think that any Track-It improvements are on the horizon, but I talked about in the next 18 months, hopefully replacing Track-It with something that is a lot more user-friendly and that maybe can address that particular issue. I'm trying to remember the other. Oh, yes. And so, yes, E-Plan, I'm not aware of they're going to be able to accept multi-page documents for or plan pages. The documents that are submitted, normally the 8.5 by 11s, we can take those in a single file, but the plan pages, it's because of that versioning that comes along later. If there is a second review round, you only got to resubmit the plan pages that have changes on them, and then those version with the pages that came in the first review round, and they overlay them, and our reviewers' time is cut by 80%, because all they're looking for is what was changed, as opposed to having to re-review the entire plan page. And again.
No, that's good. And then on the licensing side, maybe look at, because I know there are multiple companies now in Lakeland who are doing design build. They're the engineer record, architect of record, as well as the contractor. So if you have one license, submit under that account and perhaps note on the plan, hey, we're also licensed with the city for these accounts, but you're just submitting under one instead of having to break this apart. The last bit of feedback I have for you, and this is on behalf of Conrad here, our permitting manager.
Conrad earlier.
Yes. So, calling in inspections in the field for construction, and I can't beat you guys up too much for this because everybody's busy and everybody's short-staffed. We understand that. We've ran into issues where we've called an inspection, the inspection cleared, as in it's out for to be reviewed and actually signed off on, but no inspector shows up, right? So this causes an issue for us, especially when it comes to critical items like pours, concrete pours, reinforcement, inspection, footing inspection, that type of thing, because in the ball's always rolling, we can't slow it down. A lot of these pours are already scheduled. You've got wheels turning, people, labor, logistics moving, so it's costing us a lot of financial impact if we have to hold these things off because of an inspection that an inspector didn't show up at. And then that puts us in a bind to where, do we go ahead with that and just take a picture and hopefully, we're dealing with a amicable inspector. So as part of that, I think, is just the environment right now with staff shortage. And but it would be nice to see if an inspector's not going to make an inspection or there's an issue, perhaps just let us know, hey, there's not going to be an inspector out there. Take a picture, document it, do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I could not agree with you more. And our own data shows that close to 99% of the time we do our inspections the day that they are scheduled, requested by the customer. So if you have an experience like that where you schedule an inspection and no one shows up, we really need to know about that, because when our inspectors, and Dale works with them much more closely than I do, they assign those inspections in the morning, and when somebody can't get to something, they're reassigning and trading inspections, and I can't get to this one or whatever. If there are any we're not going to get to, that contractor or applicant is contacted, as you described, to explain that we're not going to make it and why. So it's very, very rare that we would be no call, no show. So if that's a Lakeland experience that you have had or that you do have moving forward, please, 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 I'll put my number back up on there. I'll give you my card before you leave. Let me know, because that's unacceptable. The no call, no show scenario can't happen. The others where, yes, we have staffing shortage and people are out ill or on vacation and we're juggling all these different trades. We're working very hard, have over the last year, to increase the number of multi-trade inspectors and 1 and 2 family qualified inspectors, so that they increase their versatility and can do multiple trade inspections on different jobs and reduce the number of trips that we have to make. And so that's something we continue to do as we also lobby the Florida legislature to help broaden the pool of inspector applicants by perhaps relaxing the requirements for those inspectors.
That'd be good. That's all I had. Thank you again. And
Thank you.
Like I said, we permit all through the state and throughout the Southeast, and it's great to have this type of forum. It's very appreciated. I know there's by everybody throughout the industry is very appreciated.
I just want to address one thing, going back to your inspectors and when they're going to show and when not. If there is anything critical that is time sensitive, like pours, because pours can cost you a lot of money if they're not done on time, reach out, call me, call our office, talk to the permit tech. They'll refer you to me. I'll contact any of the inspectors. If there's an exact time you need, I can't narrow it down to exact, but I can get work it all out so that we meet your criteria and get everything done on time for you.
Yes, thank you, Dale.
I think mine will be quick. I'm David Sumner. I'm a homeowner, live out at Highland Fairways off of Griffin Road. And the gentleman here with multiple problems with his electrical, we had a similar situation. We're still in it. About a 2-year project for a simple fire suppressing range hood over our community kitchen oven. It's been a journey, but I haven't really been involved in it directly, but I wish I brought my cohort. But we've had these, as he did, repetitive visits, repetitive red tags, whatever we want to call them. And I just have a question. Is it normal standard operating procedure that if an inspector goes out and he sees something that's going to kill the job, something that's wrong that would red tag it, he stops right there, red tag, this job can't go any further? Or should he or she continue with the job, look for any other problems, and if there are 4 problems, he would write down all 4 at once, so we could take care of those 4 all at once. I don't think the inspector really wants to come back 4 times, but anyhow, that's just that simple question.
Yes, and it's a very good question. Our expectation is that that inspector do a thorough inspection. Now, in resolving one or more of those deficiencies, you know, it may impact other parts of the job when they do that. You know, we've made note of your comment about Highland Fairways. We'll get with our inspectors on the mechanical side to talk about what you're describing really is single trade, but as an assembly building in your clubhouse, it's probably got some fire considerations as well. So we're talking about our own building inspection, mechanical inspector, but also probably a fire inspector that's been involved to try to get to your specific need at Highland Fairways, but to generally speak about the thoroughness and quality of a building electrical, mechanical, plumbing inspection. They need to do the whole inspection, not just find the first deficiency and say, that's it, because you're absolutely right. That leads to others that weren't identified that are probably going to be identified on a future visit needlessly.
Hi, I'm Randy, Energy Code Consulting. I do HVAC, heat loads, duct designs, equipment selection, and State of Florida's energy calcs. If it's all right, make a couple comments on some other things people had said.
Absolutely.
Please do not cover up those disconnect labels. That's a life safety thing. Even though you may want to do something or have somebody there, you need to make sure those labels are there in different parts of the building code. They're specific to have those, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't emphasized enough that those need to be there. Another lady was asking about pre-built homes, wherever she is. If you have something like that, always concerned of orientation changes. They're never going to be the same, so kind of keep an eye on that. I did want to emphasize one of the things, at least under the energy code, Florida Building Code Energy, a state licensed engineer trumps over the 402, 405. So I wanted to emphasize that part of it. But anyway.
We're about to put you on the payroll.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to mention is it's either via the plans examiner or it could be one of the field inspectors. Grammar. I mean, I know I've seen somewhere they were kicked back to me. I'm a third party. I'm not one of the architects or builders that I work with, or even AC companies. When they reject something back, it's just run on. You're like, are they asking about the roof, or are they asking about the ceiling, or are they, I mean, even if they don't want to put periods in there, enter and make a second line so you can understand what they're asking or what the problem is. I know all these people get things returned, but I know when I see them, I'm like, you know, I kind of understand, but sometimes I'm not sure what they're asking. So just the grammar side of it. I mean, I know everybody texts and nobody puts periods in there. At least my daughter tells me, don't put periods in there.
They're using an
you know?
iPad, so it's a little bigger, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, your comment's an important one.
Yeah,
We'll reinforce that for the inspectors that
Okay.
they need to use. They need to use complete sentences and periods. Okay, I'm going to read out some cards, I suppose. Should I shuffle them? So I've got one here from, I guess, Bill DeHaven from Gulf State Signs. When I am discussing a sign project and am not sure of sign allowance, can I submit the design with sizes and specs to planning department to determine what, I can't make that word out, what the city will allow in order to sell an acceptable sign package? As long as the volume is not off the charts, what you're describing, and I don't know if Mr. DeHaven's still here, good evening, is taking that review outside of our established permit and review system. And we don't mind at all talking about a particular requirement for one or more signs, and I think I helped you with a sign issue just maybe last week. What we want to try to avoid is somebody on our staff being overwhelmed by these kinds of reviews that really are skipping ahead of the line of all the other customers who are submitting plans for review when we're pulling a staff member off to review someone else's out of turn. But absolutely, we will be happy to take a look when, especially if there's uncertainty as to the code compliance of a particular sign or signs on a site. And I'm going to read your second question now. When I sell two identical signs on a corner building location, same exact signs, why do I have to get both sets signs engineer sealed individually? The engineer seal on a building sign, I believe, is for 50 square feet or more, and that is straight out of our land development code. And because they're on two different wall faces, even though they're identical, they have to be signed and sealed separately. That gets to sort of the same question that the lady asked about the houses. There's too many variables probably for me to speak to this one super specifically, but it really, like I said, only becomes an issue when a sign is more than 50 square feet, a building sign, wall sign. Here I've got a plug. I recommend Excella as the next permitting software system. It will be in a line with the Polk County building system. And that is absolutely true. We are familiar with Excella. I will say that from what I know of Excella, it is user-friendly. It is also extremely expensive. The Cadillac, if you will, of building permitting software. But that's not to rule it out. Before we move to replace Trackit, it will require procurement. We'll have to put out a solicitation, and those companies that provide that kind of software service will submit proposals to us that we will evaluate and ultimately take to the City Commission for their approval. Suggestion to keep it moving, make a list, don't provide defense. Okay, we got Trackit classes. As a homeowner, can we pull permits for subcontractors we hire? Ooh, I'm gonna let Dale have that one. As a homeowner, can we pull permits for subcontractors we hire?
Yes, you can, but you are taking all the responsibility, liability of those contractors. As a homeowner builder, you're able to pull your own permit, and then you can hire a handyman, you can hire, they don't even have to be licensed, but you are taking on every liability that they do. If they even get injured at your house, that liability is on you. So I don't recommend it, but you can do that.
Thank you, Dale. And we're starting to lose some people. I've only got 2 cards left, and I'm not sure, based on one of them, whether the intent was for me to read them out, but since they came to me, I thought that was what was intended. Communication, better city departments and committees. Citizen went, okay, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to deal with this one tonight. I'll have to figure out what is being asked. City approval on a dumpster. If the author's still here and wants to clarify, I'll be happy to listen and answer. We will hopefully have a new building construction processing the next 2 years. Can you please offer a service for us to deal with at the city? Okay, so they want that help desk mentality or service that was asked for earlier, which we certainly can evaluate having somebody on call to handle those. Any other questions before I move on? I promised 3 slides. If you want to play Kahoot, John, we built it, we might as well run it, right? With the people that are left, not too many. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pendry. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. My reason for speaking was not to trash Mr. Bush. The idea was, I don't think Mr. Bush had seen many battery systems hooked to solar, and that's where issues came up. One of the things was he wanted to know the transformer size that fed our development, which within the Lakeland Electric Service area, it had to be bumped back to the engineering office in Tampa for them to contact Lakeland Electric to find out that question, as well as we had to put in a $2,500 lumen panel because Mr. Bush was afraid that if we lost power in the winter and all of a sudden the 5-ton heat pump, the 5-ton air handler, the heat strips, the hot water heater, all that stuff tried to start at the same time. He was concerned that there was no protection for the batteries. But there are breakers that would trip. He doesn't really understand the battery backup system. But I would be glad if he wants to come out to my house, I'll be glad to show him the system.
Thank you, Mr. Pendry.
Yeah, it was not.
I didn't take any of your comments as an attack on Mr. Bush. Okay, so what happens now is that we take the feedback we received from you, the cards, those you left behind, emails to LCED, the comments you made in person tonight. Thank you for those of you that did that. We're going to take all of that back and we're going to evaluate it. We're going to provide a report to the City Commission that speaks to that and makes recommendations or advises those things that we can do, that we can implement in the short, medium, and long term. We're going to continue to have events like this. They may not be as grand. They may not involve quite as much food. If we have leftovers, if anybody wants to take some home. And then, as I said, we're looking to replace Trackit this fiscal year and into next. That replacement will undoubtedly include the ability to schedule inspections via text message, which is something we've been evaluating lately. Potentially expanded virtual inspections, because it's the wave of the future for a lot of contractors and owners. And there again, continued E-plan improvement. There is an E-plan upgrade project docs for early calendar year 22. But beyond that, we will continue to work with Evolve, the company that owns Project Docs, to make E-Plan even more customer friendly, easier to use, intuitive. With that, thank you all so much for attending tonight. We do appreciate you. We do.